My name is Mason Everett, 31 years old, and the last place my family expected me to show up was the shadowed back table of my sister's lavish birthday party at a luxury hotel ballroom in Orlando. She was turning 35, but the night wasn't about the cake. It was the official handover of the family's $70 million chain of high-end jewelry stores. The room held over 100 guests, designers, influencers, investors, all dressed to impress under glittering chandeliers, while servers glided past with trays of champagne. My sister stood on the stage in a sleek, shimmering gown, microphone in hand, that perfect smile on full display. She thanked the crowd, then let her eyes sweep the room until they landed right on me, sitting quietly in my only decent navy blazer. She paused just long enough for everyone to notice. Then she leaned into the mic with a soft laugh and said loud enough for the whole ballroom to hear, "Some people are just meant to stay behind the scenes forever, polishing what others create, never getting to wear it themselves." Laughter spread fast, glasses clinked, heads turned my way. My parents stepped up beside her, beaming. Dad handed her the thick folder with the transfer papers. Full control of the entire jewelry empire starting tonight. Mom dangled a set of keys, letting the Mercedes-Benz emblem catch the light. "We're so proud of you, sweetheart," Mom said into the mic. "You make this family sparkle, unlike certain others who only dull our name." I sat frozen, every stare burning into me, fingers tight around a glass of water I hadn't touched. That's when an older man in a sharp charcoal suit, someone I'd never seen before, quietly took the empty seat next to me. He slid a thick cream envelope into my hand under the table and leaned in close. "It's time," he whispered. "Drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from right now and what time it is there. Let's see how far this story spreads across the world." Dick. Every morning at 5:30, my alarm buzzes in the small one-bedroom apartment I rent on the outskirts of Cleveland. I hit snooze once, then drag myself out of bed, pull on yesterday's jeans and a faded hoodie, and head to the kitchenette for black coffee in a chipped mug. By 6, I'm behind the wheel of my 20-year-old Chevy Silverado. The engine coughs and rattles the whole 40-minute drive down I-71 to the glass manufacturing plant on the industrial edge of the city. I punch in, grab my hard hat and safety glasses, and step onto the floor where the heat hits you like a wall. Giant furnaces roar day and night, melting sand into molten glass that gets shaped into sheets. For windows, windshields, anything that needs to be clear and strong. My job is keeping those furnaces running, checking temperature gauges, replacing worn seals, climbing ladders to clear blockages, scraping residue off crucibles that weigh more than I do. The air smells sharp with chemicals and burnt silica. Noise never stops. Fans screaming, conveyors, clanking alarms beeping if something drifts out of spec. 10 hours on my feet, steel-toed boots pinching back, aching from bending over control panels. Breaks are 15 minutes twice a day. The lunchroom is always packed, so I usually eat my ham sandwich standing near the vending machines while guys talk about the Browns game or whose kid just made the honor roll. $45,000 a year after taxes keeps the rent paid and the fridge stocked with basics. Overtime helps, but it's never guaranteed. Across the country in Orlando, my sister wakes up whenever she feels like it in her penthouse overlooking the city skyline. She rolls into the corporate headquarters around 9 or 10, designer bag on her arm, latte in hand, greeted by assistants who earn more in a month than I do in 2. Hundreds of thousands base salary plus bonuses tied to new store openings and holiday sales numbers. Her office has floor-to-ceiling windows, fresh flowers delivered weekly, and a private balcony where she takes calls with suppliers in Antwerp or Milan. She spends her days reviewing sketches from jewelry designers, approving diamond selections, planning launch events for limited edition collections, photo shoots with models wearing pieces worth more than my truck. Red carpet appearances where reporters ask about the young visionary expanding the family legacy. Every move gets posted. New Necklace Lines magazine covers her shaking hands with celebrities at galas. The family group chat lights up with screenshots, heart emojis, fire emojis, proud comments from mom and dad tagging her over and over. My name hasn't shown up in that chat for months. No one asks how the plant is running or if the new furnace upgrades came in on time. When I was a kid, it started small. Dominique got the new bike while I got the hand-me-down. She got private tutors for SAT prep. I worked weekends at the local car wash to save for community college. She got the full ride to business school in Florida. I got told figure it out yourself. When Grandpa Ralph passed, they flew her first class to the funeral, put her front row, let her give the eulogy. I drove 12 hours straight, sat in the back, and helped carry the casket without a word of thanks. They always said she had the vision, the polish, the drive. I was the practical one, good with my hands, better suited for real work. Mom would pat my shoulder and say, "We're so proud of both our kids in different ways," but her eyes always lingered longer on Dominique's report cards, her internships, her promotions. Dad bragged about her to his golf buddies, showed off articles about the stores expanding to new cities. Me, he'd mention in passing that I keep things running at a factory up north. Some nights after a long shift, I sit on the sagging couch with a beer, scroll through the group chat, see another photo of Dominique at a rooftop event, caption shining bright as the diamonds she sells. I read the comments, feel that old knot tighten in my stomach, then lock the screen and stare at the ceiling until the room goes quiet. Last summer, during the late shift when the factory was running at full capacity. The plant never really sleeps, but nights are when we push hardest to meet deadlines for automotive glass orders. I was on the floor alone near the main furnace checking routine readings around 11 when I noticed the pressure gauge on the primary melter climbing faster than it should. The digital readout blinked red, then steady red. Something blocking the flow inside the tank, building heat and pressure that could rupture the whole thing. I radioed the control room first, but no answer. Alarms hadn't triggered yet. The sensors were lagging. I knew if that tank went, superheated glass and flames would spray across the entire line. 40 guys were still working downstream, shaping cooling packing. I didn't wait. I sprinted to the emergency panel, slammed the master power cutoff, killing electricity to the furnace feeders. Sparks flew from the breakers as everything powered down hard. Next, I hit the auxiliary cooling system, liquid nitrogen lines that flood the tank walls in seconds. Steam exploded out vents, hissing loud enough to rattle my teeth. People started yelling, running toward me. I grabbed the nearest mic on the wall PA and shouted for evacuation. Code red, main, melter. Clear the floor now. Use east and north exits. Voices echoed back in panic, boots pounding metal grating. I stayed long enough to make sure the last guys on the far catwalk got out, then ran myself as secondary explosions popped behind me. The fire was contained to the tank area. Sprinklers and foam finally kicked in. No one got hurt. Just scorched equipment and a week of cleanup. Management called it a miracle. The official report listed 40 workers on shift that night. All walked out because the shutdown happened fast enough. They installed better sensors after, but I never asked for credit. When the thank you letters started arriving at my locker over the next weeks, I was surprised how many there were. Handwritten notes on lined paper, some with kids' drawings, a few $20 bills tucked inside homemade cookies in Ziplocs. One guy wrote about coaching his daughter's soccer team again because he still had both hands. Another sent a family photo from a barbecue he almost missed forever. I read each one, folded them carefully, and stored them in an old shoebox under my bed. Never showed anyone at home. I took the overtime pay from the cleanup weeks and quietly routed most of it through the Employee Hardship Fund as an anonymous donor. The money went straight to new pressure monitoring systems, upgraded fire suppression lines, and mandatory refresher training for every shift. I didn't need my name on a plaque for that. A few months later, an envelope came from the U.S. Department of Labor. Invitation to a small ceremony in Washington, D.C. for a National Workplace Safety Award. I flew out alone on a red-eye, accepted the framed certificate on stage with a quick handshake, took one photo by myself in front of the seal, and flew back the same day. The award hangs in the corner of my living room now, half hidden behind a bookshelf. Teresa Everett, my aunt who lives down in Tampa, found out somehow through an old co-worker of mine who'd moved south. She called one Sunday morning voice, calm like always. "I heard what you did last summer," she said. "You saved all those people, Mason? Real people with families waiting at home." I tried to brush it off, told her it was just protocol, but she wouldn't let me. "Don't let anyone make you feel small for it. You did something brave." A week later, a care package showed up. Protein shakes, good bandages, energy bars, and a short note in her neat handwriting. "Don't ever let them diminish what you've done." I kept that note taped inside the shoebox lid. I never mentioned any of it to Mom, Dad, or Dominique. They would have called it part of the job or changed the subject to the latest store opening. So I kept it quiet, like always. A few weeks after the award plaque arrived in the mail, one afternoon, a thick ivory envelope appeared in my mailbox, the kind of high-quality paper with the family jewelry logo embossed in gleaming gold foil on the front. Inside was a formal invitation from Mom and Dad, heavy cardstock, elegant scripted lettering, announcing Dominique's 35th birthday celebration at a luxury hotel in Orlando, with a small line at the bottom: "Family presence required." I stood in the apartment hallway holding it for a long time, feeling the full weight of that phrase. They hadn't called to ask if I could make the drive down. They simply assumed I would show up like always. That same evening, my phone buzzed on the kitchen counter while I was reheating leftovers. Dominique's name lit up the screen. The message was brief. "You really don't need to come. It'll just make things uncomfortable for everyone. No greeting, no sign-off." I stared at the words until the screen went black, then set the phone face down. Over the next few days, the family group chat kept lighting up with new photos: Dominique in the design studio, trying on prototype necklaces heavy with emeralds, signing papers for the flagship store opening in Miami, posing with architects for the renovated Orlando headquarters. Captions overflowed with excitement, Mom and Dad's replies brimming with praise and diamond emojis. Investors chimed in. Media outlets tagged her in features about the next generation of luxury jewelry. I watched it all from the sidelines, thumbs hovering over the keyboard, never typing a single word. The invitation sat on my coffee table like a challenge I couldn't ignore. Finally, one evening after work, I called Teresa. She picked up on the second-ring traffic noise humming in the background. She was driving home in Tampa. I told her about the invitation, read her Dominique's message aloud. She was quiet for a beat. Then her calm, steady voice came through. "Go if it feels right, Mason. But don't let them push you around. You deserve to be there as much as anyone." I admitted I wasn't sure I could face it alone. Without hesitation, she replied, "Then you won't have to. I'll fly up to Cleveland the day before. We'll drive down together." She kept her word. Teresa landed on a Thursday red-eye. I picked her up at the airport in my old pickup, her small suitcase tucked in the back. We stopped at a roadside diner for coffee and donuts, then hit the highway south more than 1,000 miles through Ohio, Kentucky, Tennessee, Georgia, and finally Florida. The drive took 2 long days. We talked about everything except the family, her ER nursing shifts, my latest projects at the plant, favorite roadside diners, old movies we both loved. She told stories about Grandpa Ralph from before I was born, how he'd taught her to fish on summer visits. I shared a few memories of him taking me to hardware stores when I was little, letting me pick out tools like they were toys. We laughed about terrible motel coffee and sang along to classic rock stations fading in and out. As we crossed the Florida state line, my stomach knotted up again. The landscape shifted, flat expanses, palm trees lining the interstate, the air growing thick and humid even with the AC cranked to full blast. Teresa noticed my grip tightening on the steering wheel but didn't press. Instead, she reached over and squeezed my arm once firm, warm, reassuring. The night before the party, we checked into a budget motel on the outskirts of Orlando. I drove to a nearby mall and bought a new white dress shirt, the only upgrade I could afford to pair with my old navy blazer. Standing in the fitting room mirror adjusting the collar, I felt a tangle of defiance and dread. Part of me wanted to turn the truck around and head straight north, but the other part, the part Teresa believed in, refused to give them the satisfaction of my absence. The following evening, we pulled into the hotel's valet area. The ballroom lights were already blazing, spilling brilliantly through the tall, towering windows. That Saturday night, the ballroom in Orlando was even more dazzling than I remembered from the invitation photos. Teresa and I arrived a little late, on purpose slipping in through a side entrance to avoid the main crowd. We found our assigned table near the wall, far from the stage, half hidden by a floral arrangement taller than both of us. The room buzzed with over 100 guests in tailored suits and glittering gowns, waiters weaving between tables with silver trays of appetizers and flutes of champagne. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over white linen and centerpieces dripping with orchids. Dominique commanded the stage in a sleek black gown that caught every spotlight. She held the microphone confidently, voice smooth as she spoke about the future of the jewelry empire. New collections inspired by ocean gems, expansions into international markets, partnerships with top designers. The crowd hung on every word, applauding at the right moments, phones raised to capture her vision. Then she paused, smile still in place, and let her gaze travel across the room until it settled on our table. The pause stretched just long enough for conversations to quiet, heads turning to follow her line of sight. She leaned closer to the mic, tone light but cutting. Of course, success like this takes real vision and drive. Some people have it. They create things that shine. Others are just meant to stay behind the scenes forever, polishing what the rest of us make, never quite getting to where the results themselves. A wave of laughter rolled through the room, sharp and quick. Glasses clinked in approval. Whispers floated from nearby tables as eyes flicked my way. Teresa's hand found my knee under the tablecloth, squeezing once, steady grounding. I kept my face neutral, staring at the untouched bread plate in front of me. Dad climbed the steps, first arm around Dominique's shoulders, beaming like he'd won the lottery. Mom followed with a velvet box in one hand and a thick folder in the other. The projector behind them flashed images of flagship stores, red carpet events, magazine covers. Dad took the microphone. Tonight isn't just about a birthday, it's about recognizing true leadership. He opened the folder on the podium, revealing signed documents and glossy photos of new locations. We're officially transferring full management of the $70 million jewelry chain to Dominique, effective immediately. Cheers erupted. Mom held up a set of keys, letting the Mercedes-Benz emblem spin slowly under the lights. "And this is just a small token to match the brilliance you bring us every day," she said, voice carrying over the speakers. "We're so incredibly proud of you, sweetheart. You make this family sparkle brighter than any diamond, unlike certain others who only seem to dull our name." The applause grew louder. A few guests near the front clapped harder, glancing back at me with smirks. Dad pulled a single sheet from his jacket pocket. Crisp letterhead from the family estate office. He held it up for the room to see, then turned directly toward our table. "Mason," he called out, voice booming through the sound system. "Come on up here, son. We need you to sign this waiver of inheritance rights. Make everything official for your sister." The ballroom fell almost silent. Conversations died mid-sentence. Every head turned. Phones that had been recording Dominique now angled my direction. Teresa's grip tightened, but she let go as I stood. My legs felt heavy walking the long aisle between tables, carpet muffling my steps, while my pulse pounded in my ears. Guests parted slightly, some avoiding eye contact, others watching openly. On stage, Dad extended the pen paper already placed on the podium. The waiver was clear. Relinquish any future claim to assets, allowing immediate, full control to pass to Dominique without delay. Mom adjusted her necklace, looking past me. Dominique stood with arms crossed, small smile playing at her lips. I took the pen. Metal cool against my fingers. The signature line waited blank. The second the ink smeared across my thumb. The side door behind the stage creaked open. A man in his 70s, silver hair neatly combed, wearing a charcoal suit with a slightly loosened tie, stepped into the ballroom carrying an old leather briefcase. He moved with quiet purpose, ignoring the sudden murmurs as heads turned. Dad's face tightened. Mom's hand went to her pearls. Dominique shifted her weight, arms still crossed. The man stopped at the edge of the stage and cleared his throat once. A sharp sound that cut through the low buzz without needing volume. "Excuse the interruption," he said, voice steady and loud enough to reach the back rows. "I'm Mr. Francis Doyle, former personal attorney for Ralph Everett." He set the briefcase on a nearby empty table and clicked it open with 2 deliberate snaps. Guests leaned forward. Phones that had been pointed at me now shifted toward him. He pulled out a thick folder stamped with a raised notary seal dated 12 years earlier. "This is the authenticated copy of the last will and testament Mr. Everett had notarized in my office shortly before his final illness," he explained, holding it high so the front tables could see the embossed mark. "The original was delivered to the family as required by law, but records and affidavits show it was destroyed soon after the funeral." Gasps spread like a ripple. Dad's jaw clenched visibly. Mom whispered something urgent to Dominique, who shook her head. Francis Doyle lifted a tablet from the briefcase and tapped the screen. The large backdrop behind the podium, where Dominique's celebration banner still hung, flickered, then began playing a video. Grandpa Ralph appeared on screen, seated in his study armchair, frail, but eyes sharp under the desk lamp, a quilt over his lap. His voice came through clear despite the age. "If you're watching this, it means I'm gone and someone is trying to ignore my wishes. I've watched both my grandchildren grow up. One chases headlines and profit. The other quietly protects lives. Real lives, not numbers on a balance sheet. Mason has shown true character by saving those workers in Cleveland. Because of that courage and integrity, he gets the entire estate. Everything. No conditions, no delays, no interim arrangements." The clip ended. The room froze. Teresa shot to her feet beside our table, pointing straight at the stage. "That's Grandpa's real will," she called out, voice ringing clear. "You can't bury it and pretend it doesn't exist." Security near the doors hesitated, looking to Dad for orders, but he stood rigid, staring at the frozen screen. Francis Doyle raised a hand to quiet the growing noise, then turned back to the crowd with the folder open wide. He held up page after page, legal text, blue ink signatures, red notary stamps. "This certified court-filed copy transfers the full estate, including the jewelry chain trust investment accounts and all related assets, directly to Mason Everett," he announced. Explicitly because of the factory incident where he saved 40 lives, followed by anonymous contributions to workplace safety that no one here knew about until now. He laid out the evidence piece by piece on the table like cards in a winning hand. First, the official factory incident report. Diagrams of the melter tank witness statements, Mason's name highlighted as the employee who initiated emergency shutdown and evacuation. Next, plastic-sleeved copies of the 40 handwritten thank you letters, each notarized, fanned across the surface with date signatures, even enclosed family photos in some. Then bank records, printouts showing transfers from an unnamed donor account into the plant's safety fund for new monitoring equipment and training programs, traced through tax filings to contributions Mason never claimed publicly. Finally, the framed Federal Workplace Safety Award from Washington, D.C., gold lettering gleaming under the chandeliers, presented for exemplary courage in crisis. Guests exchanged stunned glances. Phones came out again, recording openly now. A few near the front murmured about due diligence and board implications. Teresa stayed standing, arms crossed, eyes locked on the stage. The murmurs grew louder. a wave of whispers turning into low conversation as recognition sank in across the room. Before anyone could process what was happening, the main doors burst open again. Mr. Patrick Malone, the company's chief financial officer, rushed in, face-flushed tablet clutched tight against his chest. He nearly knocked over a chair as he hurried to the stage, breathing hard. He swiped the screen and held it up for the projector to display. Green digital signatures, timestamps, bank portal in real time. Emergency board vote just concluded, he announced, voice cutting through the stunned hush. The coercion clause in the original trust has been triggered by attempted signature under public duress, witnessed by over 100 guests tonight. The screen showed wire confirmations flashing live $18 million from the contingency reserve, plus immediate revocation of all interim management rights, transferring directly to Mason Everett. Dad lunged toward the tablet. "This is impossible." Patrick yanked it back, stepping aside. "Assets frozen across all subsidiaries pending full audit," he continued. "The Hawaii. No, the jewelry chain contract is revoked effective now. Independent forensic review begins tomorrow morning. No access for current management until cleared." Dominique's face went white. She grabbed the podium edge. "You can't." Patrick scrolled faster, voice steady over the rising noise. Additional findings from preliminary review: over $250,000 in questionable expenses charged to company accounts, personal travel, luxury items, and charitable donations that never reached the named organizations after fees and reimbursements. He displayed invoices side by side, gala appearances billed as marketing designer clothing labeled as uniform samples, wires to personal accounts disguised as vendor payments. A venture capitalist in the front row stood. The board was aware of these discrepancies. His partner was already typing furiously on a laptop. More guests pulled out phones, filming openly now. The projector updated again. A red banner across the bank portal: account access suspended. Outside, through the glass doors, tow trucks pulled up to the valet area, lights flashing. Security staff directed one straight to the shining new Mercedes, hooking it up within minutes. Dominique screamed, voice cracking, "That's my car, stop them." She charged toward Patrick, arms flailing. Two security guards intercepted her mid-stride, pinning her arms gently but firmly as she struggled and yelled incoherently. Mom collapsed into the nearest chair, hands over her face, shoulders shaking with sobs. Dad stood frozen, mouth opening and closing, eyes darting between the screen, his daughter being restrained, and the tow truck hauling the car away. Investors near the front murmured louder about lawsuits, fiduciary duty, potential criminal referrals. A few headed for the exits, phones to their ears. Teresa moved to my side on stage, her presence solid. The waiver still lay on the podium, ink smear dried. I let the pen drop from my fingers. It rolled across the wood and fell to the carpet with a soft thud. I looked straight at Dad, Mom, and Dominique, all three for the first time that night, and said, voice calm and clear enough for the nearest microphones to catch, "I'm done with this family. We're finished." 6 months later, I stood outside the newly opened building in Cleveland. The sign above the entrance read, "Everett Workplace Safety Foundation," in clean steel letters. Inside, certified instructors ran hands-on sessions for crews from factories across the state, virtual reality simulations of hazard scenarios, live fire extinguisher drills, emergency response practice on mock assembly lines. We trained over 2,000 workers in the first quarter, alone, rotating shifts from plants in Ohio, Pennsylvania, even as far as Michigan. State labor reports showed workplace incidents in participating facilities dropped 24% compared to the previous year. No big press events, no ribbon cuttings, just measurable results funded by the contingency payout and ongoing grants. I left the old apartment behind and bought a quiet 2-bedroom condo overlooking Lake Erie. Mornings started with coffee on the balcony, watching freighters glide across the water under gray skies. Evenings meant long walks along the shore path, wind off the lake, clearing my head. I consulted remotely for safety audits nationwide, traveling only when a site needed hands-on review. The factory job stayed in the past. I still got occasional emails from former coworkers, updates about new equipment installed, thanks to the foundation photos of teams completing courses. Simple messages that carried more weight than any bonus ever could. Dominique took a sales position at a mall jewelry kiosk, minimum wage, plus small commissions. She worked weekends and holidays, standing behind glass cases showing cubic zirconia to shoppers who barely glanced up from their phones. No more private jets or designer launches. Dad and Mom sold the Orlando penthouse to cover legal settlements and back taxes after the audits wrapped up. They downsized to a modest one-bedroom apartment in a suburb outside the city. Beige carpets, community rules about quiet hours, a shared pool that closed early. No more galas or board seats. The family group chat went silent the week after the party. No calls on birthdays, no accidental texts, no run-ins at stores. I changed my number anyway. Silence became permanent, and I stopped waiting for it to break. Teresa drove up most Sundays from Tampa in her reliable sedan. We cooked simple meals, pasta with herbs from the balcony pots, grilled fish in summer, watched classic movies on the big screen, talked about books or her latest stories. We never brought up the others. Some evenings, I leaned on the balcony rail as the sun dipped low, turning the lake surface gold and pink. Waves hit the breakwall steady and strong. Real worth isn't measured in headlines or price tags. It's in the choices made when no one's watching, the risks taken to protect others, the quiet consistency over flash and favor. Favoritism and facades crumble fast when truth shows up. Courage and kindness build something that lasts.